Thebes, Egypt. Year, 1230, before Christ. The air above the Nile shimmered like molten glass as the sun sank behind the pillars of Karnak Temple. From a distance, the sacred city glowed gold. But deep inside its heart, behind heavy stone walls, something unholy was happening. Torches flickered against painted gods. The scent of resin and incense filled the air. And at the center of the chamber, a young girl trembled beneath linen wraps meant for the dead, her muffled breath fighting against the sacred chants that demanded it cease. Her name was Neferet, the daughter of Egypt's high priest, and on that night she was being mummified alive. Before we go deeper into this forgotten tragedy, remember this: history hides its darkest sins behind words like purity and faith. If you believe truth should never be buried, stay with me till the end of this story and share it with others. Because what you're about to hear was never meant to be remembered. Neferet had been born beneath the same towering columns that would one day entomb her. Her first cry echoed through the marble halls of Karnak, halls so ancient that even the wind carried prayers older than memory. Her father, Rautip, was the high priest of Amun, a man whose voice could silence kings. To him, Neferet wasn't a daughter. She was an offering, a living symbol of holiness molded for the gods. From the moment she could walk, her life was bound in linen and ritual. She was taught to bow before idols before she learned to laugh, to pray before she learned her own reflection. The women of the temple dressed her in white robes, brushed sacred oils through her hair, and whispered words that sealed her fate. You are chosen. You are pure. You are the bride of Amun, untouched, eternal. To the priests, her purity was sacred. To Neferet, it was a prison. Outside the temple's gates, Thebes was alive, laughter spilling through the streets, merchants calling out in the dusty air, musicians playing by the river as the Nile glowed under the setting sun. Sometimes, Neferet would stand at her chamber window peering through the lattice at the people below. Children splashed in the river, lovers walked hand in hand, and for a moment she would forget she was holy and wish she was human. Sometimes she would whisper to herself, imagining a different life, one where her name was unknown, her face unpainted, her spirit free. But dreams were dangerous things in Thebes, and dreams were the first things the gods demanded you sacrifice. It was during the festival of Opet that everything changed. As the sacred bark of Amun was carried through the crowded streets, Neferet stood among the priestesses, her face hidden beneath her veil of white linen, and then, through the shimmer of incense smoke, she saw him. A young scribe named Kimu, his hands stained with ink, his eyes alive with curiosity. For a single heartbeat, their gazes met, and in that instant, the world she'd known cracked open. That night, she couldn't sleep. The moonlight poured through the columns like silver water, and she imagined hearing his voice, though he had never spoken a word. And for the first time in her life, Neferet questioned her gods. Did Amun demand purity or obedience? Did holiness require silence or sacrifice? That single forbidden thought was her first act of rebellion. Weeks passed, then months. Neferet found excuses to cross paths with Kimu, carrying scrolls, fetching water, walking the courtyards where he worked. Their exchanges were fleeting, whispers between footsteps, glances between pillars. But in those stolen moments, something sacred bloomed. Love. A love that was forbidden. A love that could cost her life. There were nights when they met in the shadows of the garden walls, their words soft and trembling. She told him of the stars she could never touch, and he promised that one day she would walk under them freely. For a time she believed him. For a time she believed love could rewrite destiny. It began as a rumor, soft, slithering, poisonous. A whisper passed from servant to priest, from priest to her father. Soon, even the statues seemed to watch her differently. The temple's air thickened with suspicion. The same men who once bowed before her now avoided her gaze. Even her father, proud, stern Rautip, began to look at her as if she were a blemish on his faith. One night, a young servant girl came to her trembling. "They are saying you spoke with a man," she whispered. "The priests meet tonight. They say the gods are angry." Neferet ran to her window, hoping for one last glimpse of Kimu below. But the courtyard was empty. Only the chants of the priests echoed through the dark, rising like a storm. The temple no longer protected her. It was preparing to bury her. By dawn, guards came for her. They spoke no words as they led her through the corridors. The air smelled of resin and myrrh. Her footsteps echoed like the march of fate. In the chamber of judgment, smoke coiled around a circle of priests. Her father sat upon a dais surrounded by men whose faces were painted with divine authority. Between them, a shallow basin of water. "You stand accused of impurity," Rauteep said. "If the gods find you worthy, the water will remain still. If not, it will speak." Her knees trembled. Still, she stepped forward. "I have served the gods all my life," she said. "If they find fault in me, let them reveal it." She touched the basin. For a heartbeat. Silence. Then the surface rippled. Gasps filled the hall. "The gods have spoken," a priest cried. "She is unclean." Her father's hands clenched. His lips moved, a whisper to the gods or to his own soul. "May they forgive us both." Neferet was dragged away, and in that moment she understood. What they called faith was fear wearing holy robes. They led her beneath the temple, through cold tunnels carved from stone and time. The air grew damp and heavy until it choked her lungs. At last, they entered the lowest chamber, a room lined with jars of sacred oils and baskets of linen. At its center stood a stone table. Around it, statues of the gods loomed with unblinking eyes. Her father was there. He did not speak. He did not look at her. "The gods demand restoration," the high priest intoned. "Her flesh must be sealed before sin spreads." Rauteep nodded, and in that nod, Neferet's last hope died. They forced her to her knees. The priestesses she had grown up with approached, their faces streaked with tears, and began to wrap her in linen soaked with oil. Each layer stole another breath. Each prayer drowned another heartbeat. She whispered her father's name. He turned away. When the linen reached her throat, a single tear slipped free. A priest brushed it away, murmuring, "Impurity." Resin poured over her chest, sealing the layers into a hardened shell. Her pulse slowed, faint, but still defiant. As the final cloth covered her face, she stared at the statue of Amun above her, the god she had served all her life. She had once believed those eyes were watching over her. Now they watched her die. The linen pressed against her lips. Her final breath was silent. The temple above carried on as if nothing had happened. Incense burned. Hymns filled the air. And the city outside celebrated another sunrise. But beneath the stone floors, in that sealed chamber, a girl's heartbeat slowly faded. Her soul trapped in linen and resin. Rauteep never spoke of her again. But every night he dreamed of her voice, soft, calling his name. The high priest told him it was a blessing, proof her soul had ascended. But Rauteep knew better. It was not blessing, it was guilt. Sometimes he would wake before dawn, step to the edge of the Nile and whisper apologies into the water, hoping the gods would carry them to her spirit. But the river remained silent. The gods remained silent. Only his heart answered, hollow and broken. Centuries passed. The temple fell. The gods turned to dust. Then, thousands of years later, archaeologists uncovered the ruins of Karnak's forgotten chambers. Among the debris, they found a sealed wall carved not with praise but with warnings. It took days to break through. When they did, the air that escaped was heavy and dry, as if the chamber itself had been holding its breath. Inside lay the body of a young woman, her linen fused to her flesh, her mouth frozen open, her fingers curled as if she had fought the gods themselves. The archaeologists called it ritual. Historians called it purification. But her bones told the truth. She had not been purified. She had been silenced. Some said that when the first torchlight touched her face, the air in the room trembled, as if her spirit had stirred again, remembering what it felt like to breathe. Others claimed the resin around her chest had cracked faintly, with a sound like a sigh. On the wall beside her, an inscription remained. She was offered to the god for the cleansing of sin. Those words stripped away centuries of lies. Egypt's quest for divine order had demanded human suffering. Her father believed the gods would forget her sin. Instead, the world forgot the gods and remembered the girl. The desert swallowed her temple, but her story survived the sands, and every gust of wind that passed over the ruins whispered her name, Neferet. When an English archaeologist sealed the tomb once more, a worker lit a candle and placed it beside her body. "May your spirit rest," he whispered. The candle flickered in the hollow dark, casting light over her broken figure. Outside, the desert wind howled, as if the sands themselves mourned her. Neferet's story became legend, a warning carved not in stone but in conscience, because the most terrifying things humanity ever did were not born from hate, but from devotion. Faith, when twisted by fear, becomes cruelty. Purity, when worshipped blindly, becomes punishment, and obedience, when absolute, becomes death. Neferet's death was not Egypt's alone. It was every civilization's sin, every age that silences its daughters in the name of virtue. So don't let her voice fade again. Share her story, because history repeats only what we allow it to forget.